worship and caretaking. I don't have any slides, no pictures, so you just have to listen to my boring voice. Worship and caretaking of these divinities, or pujo, is viewed as an expression of love to the divine shrine family. As the normative domestic caretakers, Bengali daughters, mothers, and grandmothers are expected to ritually feed, bathe, clothe, and worship the deities in the home shrine as they care for their family members. Citing ethnographic research I completed with 17 first and second generation immigrant Bengali Hindu women living here in the Chicago, Illinois area, this paper explores how women adapt their domestic shrine care traditions and the gender norms informing it in ways that enable the sustenance of their traditions in the U.S. This research is one part of my larger dissertation project, which explores how Hindu women in Kolkata and Chicago interpret and experience religiously dictated female domesticity. I will begin today by briefly sharing how the women I worked with in Kolkata approached domestic shrine care in order to illustrate US-based women's necessary adaptations to the shape and meaning of home shrine care. However, I want to be clear that I began in Kolkata not to suggest that it is the location of some kind of pure or authentic Hindu tradition that gets lost in the diaspora. Far from it. As I will illustrate, US women's transformations to the home shrine care traditions of their mothers and grandmothers are not best understood as a loss of tradition, but as creative adaptations that enable the maintenance of tradition in their particular contexts. This research corrects pervasive and limiting misconceptions that women serve as passive carriers or reproducers of timeless and unchanging traditions, and it calls attention to the complex adaptive negotiations of diasporic women. So in summer 2014, I interviewed 22 married and unmarried Hindu women from working and middle class, as well as Brahmin and non-Brahmin households in Kolkata, about the rituals of care and worship they perform at their home shrines. All but two of the women that I interviewed were the primary caretakers of the domestic shrine and performed daily pujo at least once a day, anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour. They described this work as their duty as women. However, they noted that their families had never explicitly explained this expectation to them. Instead, by watching and sometimes assisting grandmothers, mothers, mothers-in-law in their practices of worship and care, they had over time internalized the expectation that this was a duty, and over the years had also learned the worship and care process. So there was no formal teaching, it was watching and imbibing it. The women I interviewed in Kolkata largely described the process of taking on shrine care responsibility as one of calling and special capability. In particular, they evoked the norms of maternal care and love to claim that as women, they had innate maternal capacity that made them specially called by the domestic deities, particularly the child form of Krishna Gopal, to the shrine and uniquely capable to take care of the shrine through their acts of maternal love. So in this way, women in Kolkata framed this gendered religious duty as a responsibility. It was a duty, but at the same time it was an authority and a skill that they as women, and in particular mothers, were specially endowed. Now quite to the contrary, the women I interviewed in the US didn't associate home shrine care with their duty as women or even their effective capacity as mothers or potential mothers. Rather, home shrine care was, above all, a pleasurable means of connecting to and transmitting their Bengali identity abroad. I'll explore what this reinterpretation does. Basically, it allows home puja as a space for women to negotiate with the gendered labor norms of their households, to finally create traditions that are maintainable, meaningful, and even enjoyable in the U.S., in the specific U.S. socio-religious context. Over the course of a year, I interviewed 17 Hindu women living in the suburbs of Chicago. 12 of these women were first-generation immigrants between the ages of 45 and 75, who had immigrated to the U.S. primarily from Kolkata between 25 and 35 years ago with their husbands after marriage. The majority of these women worked outside the home at least part-time or had only recently retired from full-time careers. I also interviewed 5 second-generation women between the ages of 18 and 40, all of whom were either pursuing higher education or worked in a full-time career. So I basically want to illustrate that these are all all very busy women. All of the women I worked with were upper middle class with at least a bachelor's degree, and in all but one woman's family, their mothers had maintained a home shrine on a daily basis. 7 of the 17 women I interviewed in the U.S. do not perform daily shrine care. 3 of these women had chosen not to have a shrine in their home, and the remaining 4 were 2 unmarried second-generation women whose mothers still served as the primary shrine caretaker, and then 2 women who performed pujo at home with such a regularity that they felt they couldn't identify as someone who performed pujo. The 3 women without a shrine explicitly noted that the difficulties in their marriages and the lack of support from their husbands in domestic labor and child rearing had contributed to their abandonment of regular domestic pujo practice. This is an issue that I will return to as it's pretty central to what I found. The remaining 10 women I interviewed, of them, 7 women worship at their home shrine regularly for more than 5 minutes each day. All of these 7 women were either retired or noted having a really supportive husband or household that shared in the responsibility of taking care of the home as well as the shrine. The remaining 3 women had a shrine they regularly maintained, but their pujo was short, lasting less than a minute each day. So in an important distinction from the women I worked with in Kolkata, all but one of these women described their shrine care practices as an expression of their Bengali identity rather than an act of devotion to the divine. That's primarily how it was defined for Kolkatan women, an act of devotion, right? And as I noted above, all of them distinguished their pujo from their other duties as mothers or women, which is another difference, important difference from what I found in Kolkata. So at the outset of my analysis of this broad data, I want to note first just one very unique aspect of the U.S. that plays an important role in shaping these women's lives and their approaches to the home shrine. Women find their lives constricted by the time-intensive labor of paid employment, child rearing, household maintenance, and cooking that's expected of them in the U.S. Most women immigrated to the U.S. without the extended family networks that they might have utilized in their natal context to help care for family and maintain the household. Additionally, because all of the women in my U.S. research came from middle-class backgrounds, if they had raised their families in India, they likely would have employed some kind of paid labor to assist with tasks like cooking, cleaning, and laundry. In the U.S., such paid labor is quite expensive, and because most of these women started off with very little financially, turning to such a resource was out of the question, at least at the beginning. Additionally, the children of each of the women I interviewed, as well as the second-generation women I interviewed, were involved in a great number of extracurricular activities that required incredibly time-consuming parental involvement. Mothers, and yes, only mothers, even those employed in full-time work, were responsible for transporting their children to and attending these activities late into weekday evenings or throughout the weekend. And this was talked about a lot in all of my interviews, was just how much time extracurricular activities took. One woman even admitted to me that when her children were still in school, she would sleep in her minivan during her daughter's soccer practices just to have the energy to make it through the day. Now this, of course, is not an experience that is unique to just immigrant American women. American women probably could share similar situations. But I would suggest that there's a unique pressure placed upon immigrant parents to have successful, well-rounded, and involved children who fulfill the image of a model minority citizen. So women in the U.S. can carry a heavier burden of domestic labor and child rearing than their middle-class relatives in India. This is a can. It's not across the board, but it is certainly what I found with the women I worked with. Now, Krishnendu Roy has actually done some comparative research amongst women in Kolkata and Chicago that illustrates this really well. And he basically found that even when husbands began to share in the domestic labor and child rearing, women still spent more time in the U.S. on domestic labor and caretaking than women of equivalent socioeconomic status in Kolkata. So basically what this means is that the first generation women I talked with felt that the time that they could commit to caring for and worshiping at their home shrines was definitely limited in comparison to the time that their mothers or mothers-in-law or grandmothers or sisters had to commit to shrine care in India. So as a result, more than half of the women I spoke with noted that they had either limited, or in the case of the 3 women I spoke of earlier, had forgone regular home shrine care practices because they needed or wanted to spend the time So in this way, we can see how gendered labor norms shape the lives and religiosity of women in both contexts. But the important difference is that women in Kolkata continue to interpret shrine care as a part of their feminine duty to care for their families, whereas women in the US did not. So here we can note the connection between the equality of household labor divisions and the frequency and depth of a woman's pujo practices in the US. Women who had support from their husbands and family members in domestic tasks, including shrine care, were more likely to maintain regular and detailed pujo, whereas women who had little support spent little or no time devoted to shrine care. In fact, the three women who had rejected the home shrine care tradition altogether legitimated their rejection of the shrine as necessary for them to have the time and energy to focus wholeheartedly on caring for their children. In this way, women in the US have continued to accept and inhabit the duty of caring for their families, but have reinterpreted shrine care to be largely disconnected from this work, making home pujo this really important site of negotiation, where something that is historically expected of women in Kolkata is remade, not only to assist in their performance of feminine duties that they view as important, but also to make their lives more livable and their traditions more sustainable. Although women in the US spend less time at the home shrine as a result of this negotiation with gendered labor norms and the resulting reinterpretation of shrine care, I would like to suggest that their negotiation is not equivalent with abandonment or the loss of tradition. Rather, this is a necessary adaptation. The majority of women I interviewed have not abandoned the shrine care tradition in the US. They have modified its shape and meaning to make it a practice that is more sustainable and enjoyable given the demands of their lives. In fact, the sustenance of tradition was a primary impetus for every woman who maintained a shrine. Every woman I spoke with recognized domestic shrine care as a powerful and important expression of their Bengali identity, and a means of protecting Bengali traditions from being lost or forgotten in a non-Hindu or US context. They maintained a shrine not only to connect to their Bengali identity, which they might not regularly be able to connect to in their lives, their everyday lives in the US, an act which is important to note gave them pleasure and meaning, but they also did it to transmit these traditions to their children, another facet of the practice that gave them pleasure and meaning. So in these women's adaptations to shrine care, we may see how the maintenance of tradition need not look like replication. Rather, in order for women to maintain traditions that are meaningful, pleasurable, and sustainable in a new context, they adapted the meaning and the shape of pujo from how their mothers and grandmothers have understood and approached it. These women's negotiations and adaptations teach us that we have to reevaluate the work of culture carrying and tradition maintenance to be more complex than unquestioned reification of tradition or gender norms, but a complex balancing act of valuing, rejecting, and transforming traditions and norms so that they can be maintained and enjoyed in new places and times. In doing so, we may fully value women's work as active creators of traditions and negotiators with gender norms. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley, for this great presentation. Our next speaker is Navraj Chalgain from Illinois Wesley University, who's going to talk about gender roles and representation.
Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to begin something very positive all the time, but I have to be very realistic, so please don't mind, okay? I'm going to begin with a kind of scenario. Three married couples, two of them in their late 30s and one in their early 60s, offer prayers to Lord Shiva and Goddess Parvati. As they return to their respective seats inside the temple precincts, right in front of the divine icons of these deities, their wives wash the feet of their respective husbands and consecrate themselves over their hairs by sprinkling the liquid of the feet water and by sipping some of it. They bow down with their foreheads touching their husband's bare feet, bare toes. They offer bits of fruits and flowers to their husbands as blessed items of the deities and break the their more than 24-hour-long fast. This was a climactic moment of a fasting ritual of Haritalika Teej. Haritalika Teej, as observed by these Nepalese couples in as the taken away by one's girlfriend on the third day, popularly known as women's fasting ritual, celebrated over the 3-day period in the bright lunar fortnight in the month of Bhadra, that is in August or early September. While the climactic ritual just narrated itself speaks volume about gender relations, this particular instance in Ashland, Massachusetts, interestingly comes from relatively educated but traditional Nepalese Hindu families in the US. This presentation focuses on the roles and representation of girls and women in the sacred texts and human context of this particular festival, which is observed by women mainly for the longevity of their husbands and for the general well-being of the family. The ceremonious events are based on the 3 interrelated mythological stories, supposedly recounting the events from the golden age of truth, Satya Yuga. Day of the festival, while other narratives are related to women's sexuality and menstruation, shaping the rituals of the following days. The paper demonstrates that the myths and rituals of this festival are deeply gendered, and they seem to have been generally programmed to control women and train girls to be certain types of women and promote male hegemony. The festival gives a perception of a society which is comfortable in unjust and unequal power relations and gender discrimination, even if this occasion is generally filled with, especially on the main day of the festival, fun, pleasantness, and liberating experience. Women appear in the best of their looks, clothes and ornaments, and in the midst of austerities of brothers, enjoy in songs and dances. The paper argues that despite the problematic gender representations, there are good resources for women's empowerment in this festival, which provides a platform for women to protest what they consider the wrong beliefs and practices of the past and to promote enduring human values based on social justice and equality. So the festival is based on the charter myths, 3 different myths. For example, in the first one, it's about goddess Parvati who undergoes austerities to get Lord Shiva as a husband. She's the princess, but her father decides to give her to Vishnu, another god. And Parvati gets very disillusioned, disappointed, depressed, and goes to her friend's house, and her friend takes her away deep in the forest filled with animals and snakes and whatnot, and then keeps on worshipping Shiva, where Shiva manifests and then blesses her that he would be her husband in birth, he would be her husband. And then her father comes back, later on he finds her and he negotiates and marries her off to Shiva himself. That is the first myth. The second one is about Parvati's past incarnations as Sati and her sacrifice at the altar of her father's ritual, Yajna. We know the story. For example, Shiva was not invited. Parvati, Sati goes there and protests that her husband was not invited. And then when Sati's father talks badly about Shiva, Sati sacrifices herself in the name of Shiva, and Shiva comes back, destroys everything, and takes the dead body of Sati, and roams across the breadth and length of what is now South Asia until the body parts fail in different parts, forming Shaktipitas across. So in the story, what happens is Shiva, as he was roaming, all disillusioned, he happens to have a big following of 100 wives of the sages. And sages, they had been taking bathing in the river comes back, they don't find their wives, and then they ultimately divine that their wives followed Shiva, and they go and find them, but at the same time they understand that Shiva had a big phallus, and they were kind of not satisfying their wives, and wives followed Shiva. So the sages curse Shiva, and there is the counter curse because Shiva didn't know that those women were following them, and counter curses that sages' words may not remain true, and their wives may remain unfaithful. The third one, the third charter myth is about the defilement of menstruation. A Brahmin woman, for example, she becomes rather careless and doesn't follow the rules, regulations of menstruation. The result is that in the next life, she happens to be born as a dog and her husband as a bull in the same house. Somehow, they suffer hunger and thirst. Somehow, the son comes to know that they were their parents, and he consults the 7 sages who instruct that, this is what happened in the past. Menstruation rules were not properly followed, and the result is this one. So now you guys can worship, especially your wife can worship us, and we will remove your sins. So, as in most of the women-centered Brata stories in Nepal, there is an unjust and unequal gender relations. For example, Parvati attains position next to, that is symbol of equality, Shiva, only after she proves her worthiness through hard labor, devotion, submission, and sacrifice of her being. Parvati is also presented like a property of her father, and initially denied her individual right to choose her own life partner. Another problematic is an ideology of pollution connected to women's menstruation and its purification through the worship of 7 sages, who, despite themselves being deficient in their relationships with their own wives, are projected as embodiments of purity, wisdom, transcendence, and petriline. As we saw in the story of these sages, menstruation is presented as defiling, and if not properly handled, as leading to spiritual destruction of all those who come within its orbit. It can, for example, lead to the miserable situations if born as women, such as early death of the husbands and children, as it is written, and rebirths in the animal wombs and even in hell. This might be taken as a priestly tactic to force women to participate in this ritual oriented to Shiva. However, a cursory look at the charter myth behind menstruation shows, it's in Brahmana text, that it is the male gods who invented this kind of ideology. What happens in the narrative is Indra once kills Vishwarupa and incurs a grave sin of murdering a Brahmin. The creator god comes in and then makes Indra face the consequences of his crime just for 1 year and removes the rest of the penalties by distributing all those sins to the earth, to tree, water, and to women, resulting in the creations of desert space in the earth, rosin in trees, foam in water, and menstruation in women. This mythology clearly suggests that it was because of the crime and trickery of these representative male deities that women, but not men, are made to endure suffering and misrepresentations. Imitating Parvati's. Now let's go to the ritual section. So what happens is mainly the 3rd day and the 5th day. Sometimes 4th and 5th day are the same, happen to be the same according to the lunar calendar sometimes. The 3rd day and the 5th day. 5th day about those 2 charter myths, 3rd day about Parvati's fasting. What happens is the married women, they visit their natal parents, brothers' houses. There's big feast in the evening and they get ready for arduous fasting. After midnight, very strict fast that lasts for more than 24 hours. And next day is all, for example, prayer and then songs and dances and whatnot. 4th day worshipping Ganesha, 5th day worshipping those 7 sages and 1 wife, Arundhati. She happens to be. So in terms of feast, this one, I'm hungry now. So this kind of very preparation, and it's kind of getting ready for marriage. That is, for example, what happens in the myths, happens in the rituals, happens in this day-to-day life. They are very, very connected, not dissociated at all. So getting prepared to marry, okay, and looking for good husbands. Worshipping, that's in the Pashupatinath temple, Shiva temple. President, women president in Nepal, the chief justice women, house speaker women, they participate in this big ritual event with dances and so on. Beautiful, right? I mean, pictures. Imitating Parvati, women's fasting often goes to the extreme, to the extent that women even abstain from swallowing their own saliva. There are many reports of fainting and illnesses of pregnant, sick, and old women because of the vrata. There are also reports that some husbands misbehave while their wives undergo arduous penance. The rituals clearly idealize Parvati as a model of wife for Shiva, stating that those who observe fasting and attendant rituals are equal to Parvati. By being projected as a metaphor of purity, sacredness, auspiciousness, sacrifice, and submission, certain conceptions of femaleness are constructed. Women are also presented as delighting in physical beauty, pleasure, sensuality, and colorful embellishments, often in red and gold, markers of purity and auspiciousness, and objectified as a uniform and satisfied lot in the worship of both invisible god Shiva and visible god their husbands or prospectus husband. In the ritual context, the problem is that male gratification remains the same in terms of ideology or mindset, that women, but not themselves, should be engaged in such performative details. It is for this reason that male members in many households are often happy to spend any amount to purchase silky, expensive clothes and jewelries and makeups for their wives, so that they can display the wealth, pride, and prestige of their husbands. However, in many cases, the enjoyment or the sense of liberation for married women is just for the festival time and not so much beyond it, and women generally recede back to their daily routine. So on the fifth day, ritual of cleansing sins caused by menstruation, a very, very rigorous one, every ritual done 365 times, beginning with the cleansing of women's, meaning genitals, by themselves. As in the case of Parvati, virtues such as fidelity and submission are applauded in the worship of Arundhati, whose image formed of the sacred kusha grasses stands out at the center of ritual pavilion, while small kusha-formed installations of 7 sages surround her. These rituals appear to be very obsessive about the impurity of menstruation and of female body. Some regard this kind of practice by women as a dishonor to their own bodily processes, and their own existence. One may also wonder, ironically, how vrata ritual performed by what is termed as unsacred body could help prolong the lifespan of husbands who supposedly already have pure bodies by virtue of being male and not requiring any such rituals. Women's strength and women's power. However, the situation is not always that depressing, even in the context of this festival, and there are many plentiful resources that women can use and have been using, and at least in terms of discourses, that the festival has to be changed in some ways, revisited in some ways. First, in the Brata narrative of Parvati, she exercises her agency by deserting the male-dominated household of her father and makes him finally accept her marriage choice. The traditional Hindu society still faces challenges regarding this kind of arranged marriage by the bride's father, and the festival can teach how a father should listen to his daughter about her wishes and not make any one-sided decision. And the festival can teach about the female bond, how women should fight for women's cause, becomes an opportunity to criticize the prevailing traditional norms, certain things to be avoided, some other things to be negotiated, and a free play of their own wishes through songs and dances and criticism. Can I couple of sentences. Finally, the festival promotes better human relationships based on the qualities such as trust, respect, and sacrifice. It is also about love and romance, fidelity and dedication, and caring and sharing. And such situations can help nourish and strengthen good relations between spouses and among humans in general, and bind people in more equitable ways. In fact, positive ideas like these are not lacking in Hindu festivals, but the question is whether the participants, especially men, themselves realize the importance of such values and are transformed by them. Thanks.
Thank you everyone for presenting, and I think we have 10 minutes for questions and answer session. And can we have presenters here so that it will be easy for the audience to ask questions? Yes.
So I'm sorry I came in late, so I missed your presentation. I apologize. But I have a question for both of you. My first question for you. So you talk about this ritual of fasting among Nepali women, and you define that as a form of an oppression that produces submission among these women. Am I right?
Not all Nepalis participate in the same way. Only high caste in central hills of Nepal.
So my question is that...
And not all regard it as something submissive. They find lots of good resources within the tradition, and the ideas vary. Whether if there is submission to this extent, if there are rooms to change around, these are the options. For actual subversion, these are the options. And people are taking variously and engaging in discourses, dialogues, criticisms of each other's actions, ritual actions, and mythological interpretations.
Right. So my question is, do you think in the current times where women also face the challenge of constant body images, of making sure that they are thin, which is produced by the media and the society that we live in, that these women might be using this particular religious discourse as a way to control their own body image? So if they don't have access to like the gym, which is also a very masculine space, they're using this religion as a mean to still look thin and be accepted within the body image. So what I'm saying is, I feel like rather than just being, this oppressive form, if women are using that as a way to, challenge this larger notion by being part of this whole body image structure that all women have to face, irrespective of is it within the global south or global north. The only difference is within the global south that religion becomes a way for these women to control the body images, and they're choosing this to do it. So that's a question that is for you to think that I wonder what the women are themselves saying it. Are they forced to doing it, or are they choosing to do this? And depend on why they choose to do it, because fasting for that 5 days, obviously, maybe for a good husband, but definitely losing a lot of weight.
Yeah, there has some positive implication to fasting for 24 hours, or less or more. Some people eat, and there are ways to do fasting. For example, Phalahara, Nirahara, Jalahara, 3 types. With water fasting, you can take water, Phalahara with fruits, and Nirahara without taking anything. And here, not even swallowing one's saliva. But I have instances of some sisters taking secretly some food and then just doing fasting.
And exactly, we live in the time wherein, a lot of women in the Western world focus on juicing, right? They only survive on different juice, fruit juice. How different is that from these women in the global south that they're fasting and just depending on liquid? It's the same thing. The narratives are different, but if you see there is similarity, except this is happening within the Western world where the description is that, oh, you are taking care of your body by, just living on different forms of nutritious juice, right? I think there's.
It's a very, very good question. In Nepal's case is little different from India, maybe. Lots of leftist women, communists and so on, revolutionaries and drastic changes for the past decade or so. And those who can't or don't wish to buy and decorate themselves look to the best of they can, they criticize. Or very, very academic ones, very money-minded, not negative sense, okay? Ones can criticize, but who doesn't want to be best among themselves? And it's all for bond, community gathering, and not in their husbands' places, but in their natal birthplace. Parents invite, brothers invite, and they go, the brothers and parents, whoever male member often comes and fetches the married one, and all of them, sisters, daughters, mothers, they gather, and then, women's world, beautiful. And here, not so much gym and so on. Still, our consciousness is fatter you are, healthier. And still that rings in much of the rural areas, not so much in educated urban areas. Is that okay?
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Any other question?
Hi, my question is for Ashley.
Yeah.
Yeah, so very interesting field work. But is there any role played by men, by husbands, or the women that you interviewed or used in your study? Was there any significance? They talk a lot about their husbands'
Yeah.
attitudes and perceptions.
Yeah.
Not.
Yeah, husbands came up a lot. In the American field work, I kind of pointed to it a little bit in the talk, but I'm not sure. You can tell me if you're asking a different question, but again, the more that husbands were involved and the more kind of equal the labor divisions were within the household, the more a woman felt like she kind of had the space and the time, I guess, to devote to something other than child rearing. So that could also include shrine care. But there were also households where men took part in the shrine care, and that was part of what kind of made shrine care even more of a tradition within the household. So that it wasn't just a woman's responsibility, it was also this kind of shared familial responsibility, and a tradition that a family did together. And in those households, I found that women spent a lot more time doing it. It was a much bigger part of their lives and a much bigger part of the family's life as well. So yeah, there's a really close relationship between what the gender labor norms look like in the household, and how men were involved in shrine care, whether or not they were, and then what shrine care looked like for women. And there were also a few families where men were either outright critical or in some cases just abusive, and that had in some cases led to women leaving behind shrine care as an act of resistance, because the man would sort of expect her to maintain the shrine the way that his mother had or his grandmother had, and she would say, I'm not doing it. Like, if you're not going to help me with the housework, I'm not going to take care of the shrine. So there's a wide variety of responses, but that's kind of how men came into the story.
I think we just have one more question.
Just an observation, like in India, having a maid at home is kind of luxury for extremely small section of population. So in majority of the women in India, especially from lower class and they are into informal labor market, and they are overwhelmed with the job. But even then, there is huge, like they are into religious practices and taking care of those stuff. I don't know if there are other factors in America when they come here. There may be other factors which may impact listening those prayer hours.
Spending less time at the shrine. Yeah. I mean, part of the limitation of the study is that most of the families that I'm looking at are they're from upper middle class backgrounds, basically. So I can't necessarily speak to how that would change, how the profile would change for someone who came from more of a working class background, or when their mothers were more involved in informal labor markets and things like that. But yeah.
I think that's it for the session. Our next session is going to be on health and mental health in room 620, so we can